My name again is Will McGuire. I'm the Strategic Alliance Manager over here at Nasuni for our Azure partnership. So today I'm going to be walking you through Nasuni and our architecture and how we work with Azure to, as we say, deliver on this promise of the cloud for file storage. So when we talk about Nasuni, we're only thinking file storage. That's where Nasuni plays. So what we did here in Nasuni, we reimagined file storage infrastructure, built a platform for the cloud era. So we're going to let you consolidate storage silos into the cloud and really trying to make everything as simple as possible, make the most out of the cost savings that come with the cloud, and take a couple technologies out of your current file infrastructure while still kind of maintaining that performance and the data security that you're typically used to. So what does the cloud promise? We boiled it down here in Nasuni to three main things: savings, simplicity, and scalability. So, with just economies of scale and object storage, obviously moving to the cloud, our customers see, a 50% average just in hard costs. The technologies they're able to take out of their file infrastructure when moving to the cloud, utilizing Nasuni, we're really going to streamline everything. Simplicity, again, it's about, in this new cloud era, making everything as simple for IT and the end users as possible. So single management point, and really taking as many technologies out of the file stack as possible. And then scalability, one of the big reasons everybody moves to the cloud is that promise of petabyte scale, not having to add more disk, and really having no limits on volume sizes, directory sizes, or even individual file sizes. So at Nasuni, we play in a lot of different industries. We're very horizontal, as you can see here, across a lot of different industries. And you'd be hard pressed to find an industry where Nasuni doesn't have the 1, 2, or 3 biggest company in that industry. So as you can see here, manufacturing, AEC, media and advertising. We're really proud of that win with LinkedIn. They became a customer within the last month or so. They had evaluated some native Azure solutions, and even being a Microsoft-owned company, they just still decided that Nasuni was best for them for their file infrastructure needs in the cloud. So retail, play really well there, real estate and healthcare as well, software development as well, financial services. We really are very horizontal across verticals. So when customers come to Nasuni, typically, they're going to have an environment that is going to have maybe all of these components, maybe more, maybe some of them, but the traditional on-prem file storage stack that we see a lot of our customers have, especially customers that have multiple locations and are trying to move files across all those locations with their on-prem devices. So as you can see here, at your HQ or even other remote offices you're going to have silos of primary storage where data is going to live on that file infrastructure. You're going to have to be backing up that file infrastructure. So any capacity that you buy, you're basically going to have to buy 200% of it to be able to manage the capacity from the backup standpoint. And further on to that, you're going to have an offsite disaster recovery point, and maybe even some tape with Iron Mountain. So these are all things you're considering in your traditional file infrastructure stack when you're making purchases through multiple different vendors. And that's another thing, as you can see here, a lot of logos, Netapp, Windows file servers. You're going to have some Commvault for backup, maybe some Riverbed for MPLS, WAN acceleration. So just the idea here is when customers come to Nasuni, they really have 10, 15 different technologies in their file infrastructure stack. So when they move to Nasuni, they are going to be experiencing an architecture that looks something more like this. So with Nasuni customers, and when we architect our solution with them, we really only have 3 main components that go into what is necessary for a Nasuni customer. The first and foremost, obviously, we are a cloud-based solution. So, we leverage object storage. Azure is our biggest partner by far. We leverage Azure Blob Storage. So when somebody becomes a Nasuni customer, they're going to have Azure or object storage be the new primary location for all of their file storage. So they're taking all of that data off of their silos of NAS infrastructure, off of their Windows file servers, any other file storage platforms they might have across locations across the globe, and consolidating all of that data up into object storage living on Nasuni. Second component is the Nasuni software itself. So the Nasuni software, really what we are in its nuts and bolts is we are a file system that's built to live in object storage. So just like OneFS was built for Isilon or Waffle was built to be the file system on Netapp, we have something called UniFS. So if you haven't figured it out now, Nasuni stands for NAS Unified. So really those first two steps that we've taken there, taking all of those file data off that NAS infrastructure, unifying it up into the cloud, UniFS then acts as that file system, integrates into Active Directory. From an end user perspective, they are still seeing their files in the same organizational format that they had in the past. From an IT perspective, they're still seeing the same file shares, the directories they had in the past, but because everything is consolidated into one cloud tenant in one location, all of that data can be viewed under a single management console. So back on this slide, we have all these different points where admins have consoles, management points at different locations for different types of technologies, whether it's the primary storage or the backup. With Nasuni, it's going to be a single management console. It can be web-based. Just log in with your Nasuni information, and the IT team can get to work resolving any issues that they have in the file system at the time. And then the third part that goes into the Nasuni architecture is edge devices. So the data does live in the cloud. That's where the primary location of the file storage is, but there's still that issue of latency and performance where end users need to access files. So the large majority of Nasuni's IP and our patents that we have actually go into our caching algorithms. So while that data does primarily live in the cloud, when a user goes to access that file data, they're going to be pulling 99% of the time, that's in our caching algorithms, they're going to be pulling that data directly from cache at the edge. So latency, no longer an issue. Fast access to files like they traditionally had when they were accessing it directly from their NAS on-prem. And those are really the three main components that go into the Nasuni architecture. And we'll get into a little bit more about some of the natural use cases that come up. But when you just consider about going from this to this, the biggest thing that our customers realize in the first 3 years, up to 50% cost savings. We're going to be taking out the DR infrastructure, the backup infrastructure, and any file acceleration. We'll get into how we specifically do that a bit later, but all you're really going to need now is the Nasuni cost of our software licensing, and then the much cheaper Azure Blob storage. So right off the bat, from a hard cost perspective, when a customer moves over to Nasuni, they're going to be saving 50% just on their hard cost of infrastructure. But obviously, it's not the hard costs that sell everybody all the time. There has to be value and soft costs and productivity that goes into things. So we'll get into a couple more of those use cases now. And we'll use some customers to explain how we do it. So here's a customer, Renishaw. They had been a longstanding Netapp customer. As you can see here, they had 80 offices in 36 countries. So they were a really disparate organization, and they just had to keep on buying more and more infrastructure to try to keep up as they were expanding and growing and acquiring new companies. So as they were trying to find a solution that worked for them to move all of their Netapp locations up into the cloud without sacrificing on performance, they found that Nasuni's ability to scale in the cloud for their petabyte level requirements was unmatched, and their ability for Nasuni to deliver files to them still at their locations across the world was a benefit that they really turned to Nasuni for. So now we'll move along to Leo A. Daly, big architecture, engineering, construction customer. So one of the big reasons why customers turn to Nasuni is our unique ability to synchronize file data. So because we use that architecture that we talked about where everything is based in the cloud, and that's the primary location for the storage, and then we use kind of a hub and spoke architecture where edge devices are just caching down a copy of that file to be worked on, we can, in real time, facilitate those same synchronized copies to as many locations as users would need it across the globe. So in Leo A. Daly's case, they have dozens of locations, and they needed access to those files across the globe. But when you're dealing with large architecture design files, those files, even with WAN acceleration and increased MPLS costs, are still going to be difficult to avoid version conflicts and make sure that all the users are accessing the same file at the same time. Because version conflicts, as IT knows, is just going to be a headache as they try to, revise those. So with Nasuni and our architecture, they kind of saw us as the best option for synchronizing large files across multiple locations and still having fast access to those files. Another example here, Ithaka Energy, so a big oil and gas company based out of EMEA. So Ithaka, one of the problems that they were dealing with was a proliferation of data growth, and not only that, but they were acquiring companies quickly and trying to ingest that company's file data into Nasuni, or into their file infrastructure. So when they looked at Nasuni, they saw it as a great way. So when they do acquire a new company, as we said, it's all single management console. So when they were able to ingest that data up into Azure, then they were off and running. All that data from that acquisition was now in its own Azure tenant, and they were able to easily identify files and facilitate them across locations. So we've gone over a couple of the use cases there in those customer case studies. Obviously, NAS and file server consolidation, moving that data up into the cloud. Remote work, this has been a big point of emphasis for a lot of companies over the last year and a half now, 2 years, I guess, where you can't always rely that your employees are going to be at your office location. So we can work very well with VDI. Run virtual machines up in the cloud if users are at home and they need to access their files that way. So we're fully ramped up in VDI use cases for our customers. Third, file backup and recovery. So this is kind of something we haven't touched on with how Nasuni actually architects it. And this is a pretty interesting capability that we have. So as users are working on files at the edge, on those edge devices, we use traditional snapshot architecture. And so from that Nasuni management console, IT can go in and say, hey, we want to set up our snapshot schedules every 2 minutes, every 5 to 10 minutes, whatever cadence they would like. Now, as users are working at the edge, snapshots are taking on that edge device. They're deduped, compressed, chunked, and then pushed up to the cloud. That snapshot, because we architect Nasuni and object storage is, write once, read many. Every time that we take a snapshot and we push it to the cloud, that is going to be saved as a new object. The previous version of that file, the previous snapshot taken, will not be deleted, though, and neither will any of the other previous versions, unless the IT administrator goes in and says, hey, these are the retention periods that we have on our file snapshots. So essentially what this can create then is a timeline of previous versions in the cloud. So if a file gets corrupted or you get hit with ransomware, which we'll get to in a second, it's very easy for IT to go in, roll back to the last snapshot taken, rehydrate the cache, and get users back up and running. And so our customers, when they're considering their file data that lives on Nasuni in object storage, they do not have a separate backup solution for their file data. There's no need for Commvault or any Veeam backup or anything in that space. Nasuni handles file backup and recovery on its own. Cloud modernization, obviously the reason everybody's here on this webinar today. We're a great first step, we like to say, when customers are taking that cloud journey. We're able to consolidate all that file infrastructure into the cloud, get it in one location. And we at Nasuni, we are not a analytics company ourselves, but you got to take that first step of consolidating all your data in one place, making big data that you can then turn into analytics for your company to use. File collaboration, so going back to the synchronization capabilities we have, not only are we synchronizing files across locations so that every user at wherever they are in the globe is getting the most up-to-date version, we have a unique global file locking capability. So a lot of our architecture, engineering, construction customers will use us as they have designers in New York working with the project team in Houston or something, where teams are making live edits to these large documents. So our global file locking capability, really unmatched in our competition. And then this last piece here, disaster recovery and ransomware mitigation. So this is a big one as well, going along with the remote work and VDI. And when we talk about ransomware risk at Nasuni, it obviously is a very pertinent issue. I'm sure you all have seen the reports, all CIOs and executive leadership, it's the top priority, top concern that they have is data security. So, and everybody's getting hit with ransomware attacks. And so with Nasuni, because of the way that we architect our snapshots and making everything based in the cloud, it's very simple when hit with a ransomware attack, when you have Nasuni, to simply just roll back to a previous point in time when the last snapshot was taken. And again, this could be 5 minutes ago. So as far as employee productivity and time lost goes, our solution is really second to none. And we, have a quote here, with Nasuni, not a single customer has had to pay a ransom for their data. So the customers really, that's kind of one of those hard cost benefits that you can't evaluate into the equation until it happens to you. So Nasuni customers really enjoy the peace of mind knowing that if they do get hit with a ransomware event, their data is not going to be lost. They're going to be back up and running and have users ready to work in a very timely manner. So here's another graphic to show a little bit more about how Nasuni handles ransomware. So traditional backup, obviously, as time goes on, the amount of data that becomes available to recover decreases. So with Nasuni, it's important to be able to get, no matter how many files you have, again, we're a file system without limits, those can all be recovered in minutes. We have a great ransomware video that I can share afterwards as well, that is our CTO and founder doing a live demonstration of how Nasuni's ransomware recovery backup process compares to traditional backup with traditional infrastructure. So I'll be happy to share that out after the presentation as well. And then, yeah, just a couple more slides here that go through a little bit more of where we play. So again, Nasuni, we are for your main file shares at your company. Anything that's living on the NAS. Nasuni, we're not a block solution. We don't play in high performance compute or SAP or SQL databases or anything like that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, Office files, Word documents, sharing PDFs, you're probably not going to need a solution like Nasuni for, small Office doc sharing like that. However, for your applications and your business files and the real lifeblood of your organization in these files, whether you're a architecture or construction firm with BIM or CAD, or a media-rich company with creative Adobe Cloud, or even seismic data if you're oil and gas, or some unique software applications that you have in financial services or professional services, we really play in all of those file types, and we're going to be able to migrate those files up to the cloud, not miss a beat for your end users. They're going to be enjoying actually faster performance. Costs are going to decrease. It's going to become less of a headache for IT to manage. And Nasuni is, a great solution if you're looking to move file data up to the cloud. So that's my presentation. This file, yeah. So again, Will McGuire at Nasuni. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions. My contact info is here. And you can find a lot of great content on our website as well. We actually just had a new website rolled out in the past month. So a lot of great content on there. I encourage you to check it out.
Hey, one other question, Will, and thank you very much. I know Ted from Jupiter Medicals was questioning what kind of work you might have done in medical applications, such as with radiology images, MRIs, X-rays that are very data intensive.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So we have a customer, Austin Radiological Association. They've been a customer with us for probably 4 or 5 years now, and yeah, they definitely, they definitely have those types of files that we were talking about, whether it's PACS imaging, rich media files, X-rays, And on that note, we are HIPAA compliant at Nasuni. All data is encrypted at flight and at rest, and neither Nasuni nor Azure holds the those encryption keys. The customer owns their own encryption keys. So put your mind at ease on that aspect as well. We are HIPAA compliant.